Have you ever wondered how exactly researchers capture a perfect snapshot of a really complex issue? Say you want to study soaring high school stress levels, or maybe a sudden shift in online learning habits. How do you observe that in its natural state, measure it accurately, and then prove it with hard data, all without actually interfering in the situation? Well, it's a fascinating problem, and solving it requires a very specific toolkit.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the exact methodology researchers use to systematically measure reality. It's called the Descriptive-Quantitative Research design. If you've ever wanted to understand how scientists, educators, and data analysts gather factual information and basically turn human behavior into undeniable data, you are absolutely in the right place.
Okay, let's dive into this. At its core, descriptive quantitative research design is a method that aims to describe the current condition, behaviors, or attitudes of a group. And it does this using numerical data and statistical analysis. In the simplest terms possible, it describes what exists using numbers and measurements. You're essentially looking at the world exactly as it is right now, and you're putting a number on it.
Here is our roadmap for the day. First up, 1, the foundation. Then 2, the blueprint. After that, we'll hit 3, the real world, jump into 4, the execution, and wrap it all up with 5, the verdict. Let's get to it.
Section 1, the foundation. What is descriptive quantitative research? Honestly, the best way to think about this is to imagine a documentary photographer. A documentary photographer doesn't stage a scene, right? They don't tell their subjects what to do or mess with the lighting to manipulate the mood. They just observe what's naturally happening and capture it perfectly.
And that perfectly highlights the core difference between this approach and other types of science. In an experimental design, a researcher is basically in a lab. They're manipulating variables, changing conditions, and trying to figure out cause and effect. Like, if I do X, will Y happen? But descriptive quantitative research, it is strictly hands-off. You are purely observing facts and current situations. You're gathering factual information about a population without ever trying to determine cause and effect. You observe, you measure, you describe. Period. Section 2. The blueprint, 5 key characteristics. To truly ensure you're conducting this specific kind of study, you've got to follow the strict rules of the game. Let's look at the 5 defining characteristics that form the absolute backbone of this methodology.
Characteristic number 1, and it's a biggie, it uses numerical data. Because we're trying to be incredibly systematic and accurate here, we absolutely cannot rely on vague descriptions. Information has to be collected strictly as percentages, frequencies, ratings, scores, or averages. We're literally turning human experiences into math so they can be objectively measured.
Moving on to characteristic number 2, it describes current situations. This isn't some deep historical dive, and it definitely isn't a predictive model for the future. The study focuses entirely on what is happening right now. For example, a researcher might look at the current study habits of grade 12 students. They are measuring the present reality of that exact group at this exact moment in time.
Characteristic number 3 involves the tools of the trade. Look, if you're going to collect hard numbers, you can't just have casual chats with people. It uses highly structured research instruments. We're talking surveys, questionnaires, rating scales, and checklists. These tools ensure that every single participant is asked the exact same questions in the exact same way. That's how you guarantee the numerical data you get back is clean and comparable.
Characteristic number 4 brings us right back to our documentary photographer metaphor: no manipulation of variables. This is the golden rule, folks. The researcher only observes and describes data without changing conditions. If you start splitting students into different groups and giving them different study guides just to see which works better, well, you've just crossed over into an experiment. Here, you're just a neutral observer with a clipboard. And finally, characteristic number 5, it uses statistical analysis. Because once you've gathered, say, 500 completed surveys, you can't just stare at a pile of paper, right? You have to process that raw data. Common statistical tools used here are frequency, percentage, mean, and ranking. That's how you take a giant pile of raw numbers and turn them into a clear story about trends and patterns.
Section 3. The real world. Example topics. Okay, let's step out of the theoretical classroom for a second and see how this is actually applied to topics we care about. Now, what's really interesting about these examples is how incredibly specific and grounded they are. Social media usage of senior high school students, stress levels among working students. Every single one of these focuses purely on measuring existing conditions in a defined group. If a researcher wanted to tackle that first topic, their goal is basically,
I'm going to describe the study habits of senior high school students using numerical data from surveys. It's precise, it's clear, and it promises to deliver objective facts.
And pinpointing those specific topics leads us directly into the actual methodology. Once you know exactly what behavior you want to measure, you have to follow a strict protocol to actually pull it off. Which brings us perfectly to our next section.
Section 4, the execution, 6 steps to success. If you're going to conduct one of these studies yourself, you need a roadmap. Consider me your coach for this section. We are going to walk through the complete life cycle of a study. There are 6 essential steps. Here is your logical progression checklist. Step 1, identify the research problem. What exact situation are we describing? Step 2, formulate research questions, like what are the study habits of grade 12 students? Step 3, select participants. Find the people highly relevant to your study. Step 4, gather numerical data using those structured surveys we talked about earlier. Step 5, analyze data statistically. Turn those answers into percentages or averages. And finally, step 6, interpret the findings. Explain what those numbers actually mean in the real world. It is such a brilliant, logical flow from a simple curiosity all the way to a concrete conclusion.
Section 5, the verdict, advantages and disadvantages. Look, no single research methodology is perfect for every single situation. So let's do a balanced evaluation of this toolkit so you know exactly when to use it and when to avoid it.
This brilliantly illustrates the trade-offs you have to weigh. On the advantages side, this design is generally pretty easy to conduct. It produces beautifully organized numerical data and is super useful for huge populations. I mean, you can blast an online survey out to thousands of people in seconds. It's objective, systematic, and great for identifying trends. But check out the disadvantages. The absolute biggest one: it cannot determine cause and effect. It tells you what is happening, but never why. Because of that, you get a limited, deeper understanding of human experiences. Plus, it depends heavily on the quality of your surveys. If you write bad questions, you're going to get bad data.
To bring it all together, our source provides an immensely helpful, easy way to remember. If you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer today, memorize this one line. Descriptive quantitative research design is simply describing a situation using numbers. That is the whole shebang. If your goal is to describe, measure, and present numerical info without testing for causes, this is your go-to design. We've covered the foundation, the strict characteristics, the real-world applications, and the step-by-step execution. Now that you hold this powerful observational toolkit in your hands, I've got a question for you. Look around your workplace, your school, or your community. What real-world phenomenon do you want to measure next? The world is full of fascinating situations just waiting to be quantified. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy measuring.